Hey everybody, it's Party Elite here with another episode of Total Breakdown. This week we're going to cover a bit of a series between Xiphos and RomulanDawg, both great commanders on the battlefield, exhibiting some very close games. The first one has Xiphos leading the Dark Elves against the Bretonnians of RomulanDawg. We begin, of course, with talk of composition and deployment, and there are some interesting picks and positioning decisions on both sides of the field. Let's start with the Dark Elves here, who have brought a Supreme Sorceress of Death in charge, bringing with her Spirit Leech and Arnzapal's Black Horror, something we have not yet seen in Total Breakdown. Up front as well, you can see we've got a pair of Canine Assassins, one over here and one over here, and the front line itself consists of these 4 units of Dread Spears, Anti-Large and Silver Shields, quite helpful against the Bretonnians, who will bring Cavalry and Archers, or Mounted Yeoman Archers most likely. Right behind that front line, we've got some Sisters of Slaughter here, and we also have the Sisters of the Singing Doom back here, the Witch Elf Regiment of Renown, anti-infantry, physically resistant, and of course the Madness of Cain being inflicted there, and the Sisters of Slaughter are also physically resistant, bringing in some poisonous damage, as well as the Slaanesha's Harvesters back here, who are also physically resistant, magical, and poisonous damage among them. We have some Cold One Knights to the left, some Cold One Knights to the right, and then we've got the Reaper Bolt Thrower right here in the middle, trying to cause some damage right from the get-go as an artillery piece that is both anti-infantry and armor piercing. While up front over here you can see we've already got these 2 units of Dark Riders with shields, Vanguard deployed, flanking in, hoping to get some early damage in. The Bretonnians, meanwhile, are being led by none other than the Fey Enchantress on Unicorn back over here, and the front line here consists of 3 units of Peasant Mob. Right behind them we've got these 3 units of Men-at-Arms, and then right behind them we've got these 3 units of Foot Squires. On either flank you can see we've got some Spearmen-at-Arms, and then all the way at the back we've got a pair of Peasant Bowmen, while in the trees we have quite a large cavalry contingent. We've got some Grail Knights and some Questing Knights back here, some Questing Knights and some Grail Knights over here, and then up front over here we've got 2 units of Mounted Yeoman Archers already pushing forward, hoping to get some flanking in of their own. And you can see immediately, again, getting quite aggressive here, the Dark Elves, trying to get some damage into the Peasant Mob with a nice charge from these Dark Riders with shields here coming in from the side, doing a fair bit of hurt, mainly to morale, more so than health, while we have this other unit of Dark Riders with shields looking for an opening somewhere back here, and at the same time we actually have these Grail Knights responding immediately. They want to push in and shut these Dark Riders down. They are, of course, anti-large, these Grail Knights, but you can see the Dark Riders here turn around and try to push towards the Peasant Bowmen over here, try to eliminate some of that range support nice and early, extremely early. We also have these Spearmen-at-Arms pushing in to respond, but we're going to get a charge in here, nicely done by the Dark Elves, getting pretty aggressive right from the get-go, causing a lot of morale damage there. You can see the Peasant Mob already giving up on the fight, while if we pan back over here, you can see the Reaper Bolt Thrower firing away at some of these Peasant Mob, as well as the Mounted Yeoman Archers sneak forth, try to get a nice flanking maneuver of their own, get some shots in, circumvent those Silver Shields and Bronze Shields that some of these units have brought. But you can see the Reaper Bolt Thrower continues to punish these Peasant Mob over here, while the Foot Squires were able to respond to the Dark Riders, who are now pushing in towards this unit of Peasant Bowmen, but these Peasant Mob have completely given up on the fight. They're wavering right now, very close to routing, and the Dark Riders have decided better than to stay here right next to all of these Grail Knights and Spearmen-at-Arms, so they're pulling back into safety. But these Dark Riders with their shields have made a bit of a mistake over here. They're being shot down by these Peasant Bowmen over here. We also have these Questing Knights in hot pursuit, so the Dark Riders try to get out of there, try to get a little bit of damage in, I think, before they pull back and beat a full retreat. But you can see more cavalry units pouring forth from the trees back here as we get a nice rear charge into these Foot Squires from these Dark Riders with shields. But despite the little harassment going on over here, the Bretonnians are pushing forth with basically the entirety of their army. Great work sending those 2 cavalry units back there, though, causing a little bit of distraction early on, causing some disruption, and here as well, again, getting just a little bit of hurt in to these various infantry units and some of those Peasant Bowmen as well, nice and early. There's no reason not to take advantage of that opportunity, and there were some really large gaps, and it was nice to see the Dark Elves push in to exploit those gaps and kind of move back and forth and dance around with the cavalry over there. But you can see over here it's time for the Mounted Yeoman Archers to do a dance of their own as they push forth. We've got these Cold One Knights and these Dread Spears here pulling back. They've seen these Mounted Yeoman Archers pushing forward, so they're trying to reposition themselves and get into ideal engagement situations. These Dread Spears will have a lot of work to do if they want to chase down or shut down those Mounted Yeoman Archers, but you can see these Dark Riders with shields have completely given up on the fight. They've already completely shattered, while back here these Dark Riders were able to actually pull back into safety as the Reaper Bolt Thrower now is firing away after hitting the Foot Squires a couple times at the Peasant Bowmen over here. And you can see up front we've got these Dread Spears actually pulling back into safety as the Sisters of the Singing Doom and the Sisters of Slaughter dive into the front lines here, trying to intercept these Men-at-Arms. They're going to do a lot of damage, especially in the center over here, as we have not only the Sisters of Slaughter, but also the Sisters of the Singing Doom both diving in towards this one lonely unit of Men-at-Arms that has already taken some damage under some great Reaper Bolt Thrower fire. So in go those charges, some beautiful charges in there, and the Men-at-Arms immediately rampage. They get hit by the Madness of Cain. They're rampaging instantaneously. The Sisters of Slaughter are going to come in to finish the job with some slaughter here, and you can see those men-at-arms in the middle there immediately giving up on the fight, completely terrified, dying off very quickly. While back here, you can see these Dread Spears are being shot up by some of the Mounted Yeoman Archers who've made their way back over here, while these Mounted Yeoman Archers are firing away at the Reaper Bolt Thrower, trying to shut down the Reaper Bolt Thrower with range. Now, it might have actually been a much better idea to take a very big risk here and send these Mounted Yeoman Archers in for a melee charge and then pull right back out into safety. Extremely dangerous. We've got some anti-large Cold One Knights, some anti-large Dread Spears, and some anti-large Dread Spears here, so extremely dangerous, but might have been worth it because you can see that Reaper Bolt Thrower is getting a lot of work done. We've got these Peasant Bowmen here giving up on the fight already, and that's a lot of range support that is going to be missing. Range support means physical damage as well as morale damage. Meanwhile, on the right flank over here, you can see a fair bit of aggression from the Dark Elves as well. We've got these Dark Riders pushing in towards these Foot Squires and then turning around trying to finish these men-at-arms off, while we have the Sisters of Slaughter pushing in towards these Foot Squires next, as these Cold One Knights and Dread Spears push in towards the Peasant Mob to finish them off once and for all. The Sisters of Slaughter get charged by these Grail Knights. They get tossed back. The Grail Knights, of course, cause magical damage, so the Sisters of Slaughter are going to get a lot of hurt there, but immediately we get Word of Pain down on the Grail Knights, reducing their melee attack down to 0. Meanwhile, back over here, you can see we actually get the Questing Knights over here hit by Spirit Leech as well as the Web of Shadows, reducing their speed, but also causing damage with both of those. And watch as that health bar just melts away. We've got the anti-large Cold One Knights right there. We've got these anti-large Dread Spears pushing in as well, alongside Spirit Leech and the Web of Shadows. These Questing Knights do not stand a chance, and they are melting away. As you can see, we've got the Peasant Mob pouring in as well, trying to provide some support over here, but the Dread Spears here quite nicely pushing in to intercept those charges from the Spearmen at Arms as well. The Reaper Bolt Thrower manages to stay firing, while back here you can see the Sisters of the Singing Doom just standing steady for a little while here, eating a lot of damage from the Mounted Yeoman Archers, not doing anything. While up front over here, you can also see we've got the Supreme Sorceress of Death trying to get some damage in to the Grail Knights over here, who managed to get a charge into these Dark Riders, trying to finish off that cavalry unit once and for all. While up front, you can see we've got the Slaanesh Harvesters here pushing in to try and take care of these Grail Knights. They are also physically resistant. In fact, both units here are physically resistant and both cause magical damage. So an interesting toe-to-toe situation over here, while you can see these Peasant Mob are starting to give up on the fight, while these Questing Knights push in to try and provide some support against Slaanesh's Harvesters over here. Supreme Sorceress getting involved as well, trying to provide some magical support wherever possible. We get an Awakening of the Wood here from the Fey Enchantress, trying to cause some damage to these Dread Spears and the clump of Cold One Knights as well, allowing these Peasant Mob to give up and pull back into safety perhaps. And looking back on the right flank, you can see we actually have these Sisters of Slaughter currently losing in their matchup against the Foot Squires, but with the Murderous Mastery, in their case, active now, the Sisters of Slaughter will quickly turn that around. While further to the right over here, you can see we also have these Grail Knights surrounded by the anti-large Cold One Knights and armor piercing as well, I should mention, as well as the anti-large Dread Spears. So these Grail Knights are going to be in a bit of a tough spot here, poking and prodding these Dark Elf units, getting a lot of damage done to the Grail Knights, but you can see at the same time we have the Reaper Bolt Throwers still firing away, still trying to get rid of the Peasant Bowmen over here. While going back over here, you can see the Knight Assassin trying to provide some assistance to Slaanesh's Harvesters alongside these Sisters of the Singing Doom. We've got these Grail Knights rampaging now, so the Slaanesh's Harvesters might be able to get away, and because of that rampaging on the Grail Knights, thanks to the Madness of Cain, you're going to see the Supreme Sorceress now get the chance to finally use, let's call it Marzipan's Black Horror. I think it's Arnzipan, I believe is the name. In it comes, and it looks absolutely gorgeous as it pushes through the Grail Knights as well as these Questing Knights back here. Again, the Grail Knights are physically resistant, but the magical damage from Arnzipan's Black Horror is going to still cause hurt, go right through that physical resistance. And this was great placement, a nice clump here waiting for that rampaging to kick in to make sure that these guys aren't able to ride away into safety as that spell is cast, and you can see the Grail Knights already routing and giving up on the fight. And as we zoom away a little bit, you can see the Bretonnians are in a bit of a tough spot, a lot of routes going down, these Peasant Mob giving up, some Men-at-Arms giving up, some Foot Squires giving up, and if not giving up, they're very, very low on health. But despite that, we are actually seeing the balance of power in favor of the Bretonnians, so very interesting to see there, while the Reaper Bolt over here continues to fire away at the various Peasant Bowmen. And we also have these Spearmen at Arms here being terrified off, being shut down completely. We've got a Shatter here from the Grail Knights. Unfortunately, Slaanesh's Harvesters made to rout as well, but they do rally very quickly. However, they're extremely low on health, just a sliver of health left, about 500 hit points. And you can see at the same time we've got these Dread Spears forming up over here, a bit of a blockade to prevent these Mounted Yeoman Archers from charging into the Reaper Bolt Thrower. That Reaper Bolt Thrower has got 35 kills to its name, scaring off some Peasant Bowmen, softening up some Foot Squires and Men-at-Arms before lines actually met. So very well used, that Reaper Bolt Thrower. While back here on the right flank, you can see we've got the Sisters of Slaughter defeating these Foot Squires. Finally, they're low on morale, low on health as well, but we do have the supporting rear rear charge coming in from these men-at-arms, while over here as well, you can see these Grail Knights are completely falling apart. The Dread Spears and the Cold One Knights have done a lot of work over here. These Sisters of Slaughter, meanwhile, shutting down more Peasant Bowmen. Great call. Peasant Bowmen can cause not only physical damage, but also morale damage, and you can see over here an attempt from the Fey Enchantress to use the Chalice of Potions to try and eliminate this clump as it's trying to eliminate her. We've got a K-Knight Assassin in there. We've got two K-Knight Assassins in there trying to kill the Fey Enchantress, so she, in a desperate attempt before she begins to rout, tries to get the Chalice of Potions activated, but unfortunately, I think in her haste, perhaps, a little bit mistargeted there. At the same time, though, you can see we do have these Questing Knights coming in for a nice side charge. However, the placement of that Chalice of Potions is really unfortunate, as rather than causing any damage to the Dark Elf foe, it actually causes some damage to these Questing Knights. So I think it was a matter of haste. The Fey Enchantress was very low on morale, and we wanted to see that spell get cast before, or rather the ability get used before the rout kicked in, and it did. Just before the rout kicked in, we had that Chalice of Potions, that comet drop, if you will. Unfortunately, it did next to no damage to the Dark Elves, so a little bit of a waste there. And you can see the Reaper Bolt Thrower back here still firing freely, still trying to take care of the Peasant Bowmen here, while over here you can see we've got these Mounted Yeoman Archers moving around, again trying to circumvent the shields of these Dread Spears, firing from multiple directions, you can see here and over here. So some great management there of the Mounted Yeoman Archers, and over here you can see we actually get these Questing Knights hit by Spirit Leech, again trying to eliminate a very threatening cavalry unit. They are armor piercing, but more importantly perhaps they're very mobile as well, and you can see we have the Fey Enchantress willing to fight once more, while here we get the Dread Spears finally engaging against the Mounted Yeoman Archers. But because of that engagement, these Mounted Yeoman Archers see an opening to dive right into the Reaper Bolt Thrower, and finally, after so very long, the Reaper Bolt Thrower might finally get shut down. So great work there, using these guys in melee, now pushing in over here, again trying to cause some morale damage with those rear charges. Good call, absolutely great call over there. You can see these Dread Spears very close to giving up on the fight. The Foot Squires have a lot of work to do, though. They have to cut through these Dread Spears, and the Mounted Yeoman Archers here pulling back, charging into these Dread Spears now instead. Again, they're unbraced, so they will take a lot of damage, hitting these Reaper Bolt Throwers on the way as well, while these Mounted Yeoman Archers push in as well to try and get some routs and shatters happening perhaps, and beautifully done there, finally getting some of these Dread Spears to rout, finally getting rid of the Reaper Bolt Thrower after it got nearly 50 kills. But you can see over here the Fey Enchantress took a bit of a risk and now gets hit by Spirit Leech, so she is going to take a fair bit of damage. The two K-Knight Assassins and the Supreme Sorceress as well working away at these Foot Squires, as well as these Questing Knights and Peasant Mob, while over here off to the side you can see the Sisters of Slaughter managed to kill, or rather rout and shatter, the Men-at-Arms as well as the Foot Squires over here. Meanwhile, the Mounted Yeoman Archers continue to take care of these Dread Spears and Reaper Bolt Thrower units, while the Sisters of Slaughter are the next target for the Mounted Yeoman Archers. So you can see another charge going in over here, just tossing these ladies back. They are physically resistant, so of course it won't do as much damage as it might have otherwise done against, say, these Dread Spears, but a good charge over there, interrupting the approach of those Sisters of Slaughter. Great call, but you will see off in the distance over here, we have these Grail Knights just kind of pushing in towards these Cold One Knights. They would have been an extremely helpful unit right now against these Sisters of Slaughter, because again, the Grail Knights bring in magical damage, the Sisters of Slaughter have physical resistance. But you'll see though these Grail Knights, they are pushing in towards the Cold One Knights here, who are dealing with some Spearmen at Arms right now as well. And you can see we've got this Mounted Yeoman Archer unit very quickly pulling away from both these Sisters of Slaughter as well as these Dread Spears. So very nice management there as well. Very good awareness and preparedness, I should say, getting a nice rear charge into these Sisters of Slaughter, now trying to finish them off as well, doing so quite wonderfully. While back here you can see the Fey Enchantress once more gets hit by Spirit Leech, and she's going to lose a lot of health there. She's trying to pull away and stay safe from anything, I guess, but she needs to push in with some rear or side charges. Again, she causes magical damage as well, so a charge from her into the Sisters of Slaughter may have made a very big difference, but unfortunately you see she does begin to rout. She's giving up on the fight. We have these Mounted Yeoman Archers once more now looping around, trying to get some charges in to these Sisters of Slaughter as they whip these Spearmen at Arms. It's, oh my god, these peasants are probably way too used to being whipped here, but these Sisters of Slaughter are doing a lot of work, but in come the rear charges from the Mounted Yeoman Archers. Again, great use of a ranged mobile unit in melee, trying to come in from the sides, from the rears, to cause that extra touch of morale damage that might get the Dark Elves to break still. Meanwhile, over here, we still have these Grail Knights pushing in towards the Cold One Knights, and the Cold One Knights are actually rampaging. They might not come out on top, but they will engage these Grail Knights rather uselessly in that situation. You can see over here we've got some more Peasant Mob giving up on the fight. Two K-Knight Assassins and the Supreme Sorceress doing a lot of work. We've got this Questing Knight unit as well, very low on health, very low on morale. These Foot Squires trying to get some work done, and you can see the Supreme Sorceress not having the best of times right now. She is pretty low on health. She's at 50%, and these K-Knight Assassins as well, pretty low on health themselves. We do have the Questing Knights, though, hit by Spirit Leech, immediately immediately getting them to rout and give up on the fight, while you can see these mounted yeoman archers still ping-ponging back and forth, trying to get damage across the board here, trying to get some shots into the backs of the Sisters of Slaughter, but unfortunately they are able to overcome the men-at-arms before these Grail Knights are able to close the gap, and now the Grail Knights have to pull back into safety because the Sisters of Slaughter and the Dread Spears are able to take charge of that engagement if and when it begins. And you can see over here as well the Fey Enchantress back in on the fight, willing to fight once more, but the Peasant Mob giving up. These Peasant Mob willing to return for some glory over here. We've got the Sisters of Slaughter and the Dread Spears pouring in. The Foot Squires are going to give up on the fight. We do have these Mounted Yeoman Archers trying to respond, though, get a nice rear charge once more into these Dread Spears, just hoping to cause some of that physical damage and morale damage. The Dread Spears are facing the wrong way, they're not braced, so they will at least cause some disruption at the very least, and they do a fair bit of hurt, actually, bringing that health bar right below the 50% mark, so good call again, I must stress it. We have these Mounted Yeoman Archers, meanwhile, looking for another point of entry, looking for another way they can get in, while these Grail Knights and Mounted Yeoman Archers immediately pull back into safety from the Dread Spears there and their anti-large capabilities, and you can see the Foot Squires here giving up on the fight. The Peasant Mob are not going to have a good time, and we get another use of the Chalice of Potions here from the Fey Enchantress, a nicer clump being targeted here, but unfortunately, with the freedom to move that the Dark Elves have right now, even this one does next to nothing over here. It causes a little bit of damage to these Dread Spears, but apart from that, I think it caused more damage to the Peasant Mob, perhaps, and very little done there for the Bretonnians, unfortunately. You can see we've got these Mounted Yeoman Archers trying to help these Peasant Mob. We've got these Spearmen at Arms diving in towards these Dread Spears. The Bretonnians are slowly losing hope. The Fey Enchantress needs to find a way to get involved, to get engaged somewhere, maybe against these Sisters of Slaughter, maybe scare some units off, maybe cause a mass rout, but unfortunately, the Bretonnians are unable to do that, and instead it is a Pyrrhic victory for the Dark Elves. Early aggression from the Dark Elves was quite strong and daring, and it made a very big difference in the battle as it reduced a unit of Peasant Mob to next to nothing, but it also caused a lot of disruption during the approach. Now, most of the front lines held their ground and moved forward aggressively, but the cavalry, I think, got busy doing work that they weren't expecting to do, and that caused a lot of trouble for Bretonnia further down the line, especially since some magical damage was being wasted on Dark Riders rather than being positioned to be used against Sisters of Slaughter and Sisters of the Singing Doom, and even the Doomfire Warlocks were also physically resistant. Now, with all that said, the inability of the Bretonnians to shut down artillery early on was extremely problematic, and despite some great leadership on both sides of the field, it really was a shame to see both uses of the Chalice of Potions be largely wasted. Had they been well placed, the battle could easily have swung the other way, especially the one that missed right at the death. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I do think it's one of the best ways to learn, and it's always nice to highlight such amazing battles from the community. I'd also like to thank all of my patrons for supporting the channel on a month-to-month basis, making a huge difference in keeping it alive and running smoothly. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.